that it's sort of been one theme, and that's what is God like. I'm sure that's occurred to all of you too. I don't know why that's been the theme, except it's not a bad theme. And we're going to continue on it this morning. I might change it later. Robert and I are going to be preaching through 1 Peter in the fall. So right now you just get these little snippets from various books in the Bible that I choose to preach from, and it seems that we have focused on the kind of God we have, and we'll very much do that this morning as well. In 2000, I was involved in going to Malawi with Pastor Les's father with Emmanuel International. We had a little weekend off one weekend, and I noticed a little spot on my hand, and it was itchy and started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And 10 days after I first noticed it, I was sitting in the waiting room of a hospital in Blantyre, waiting for the doctor to look at my hand to see what was wrong with it. It was swollen all the way up to the elbow. Went into the doctor. He said, "Yeah, that's a spider bite." He said, "Wow." It was about as big as a golf ball, and it was causing me a great deal of pain. He says, "That has to come off right away." He bumped a surgery because he thought I was going to lose the use of these two fingers. And even if I get this out and get the poison out of your hand, it's you're still going to lose the use of those two fingers, which I did not. And so he bumped the surgery so I could go in. I haven't written this down, but it was fascinating. I went in, they put me on a cross-shaped table. This arm was for intravenous, and this arm was for the surgery on my hand. And the nurse said, she said, "Just like Jesus on the cross." And I said, "Jesus died." She said, "Oh, right." I said, so I didn't, or maybe I did. Maybe I came back to life too. I doubt it. But in any case, what did the doctor do? He took a razor-sharp knife and he cut a significant portion of my hand off. And he scraped and he cut a hole in my hand about the size of a quarter. And he did that after he put me to sleep. And I let him do that. And the next day, he told me to come back the next day. And I did, and went in, and he took the bandage off. And his nurse dipped a swab of cotton in pure iodine and put that in my hand. Now, Jim Clements, Les's father, was with me, and he said that my leg was going like a dog when you scratch it on the belly, and scratch its belly. And that hurt. There was a slide taken. I showed it to the church when I got back, and I said, "That is the picture of a man in pain." Now, I signed documents saying they could do that to me. I let them do that to me. I wanted them to do that to me. Now, why would I let this man cut me with a knife, inflict pain on me, go back the next day, and make the surgical pain seem small? Why did I let him do that? Because without the knife and without the iodine, I would not get better. God is a surgeon. Sometimes he gets a hold of us, and we know there are things in our lives that just need to be cut out, and God takes his surgeon's knife and he cuts. And it most often seems he just does not use the proper amount of anesthetic when he makes the cut. It hurts. But without it, we would not get better. Sometimes we go to him with a concern or an issue or a sin or a problem, and again, there is a solution that God has, and sometimes it hurts. A lot of the time it hurts. There are ways in which God is not like a surgeon at all. Sometimes he comes and does his surgical work and doesn't tell us that it's coming. Sometimes he sees a problem that we don't know about it and he works on it before we understand the issue. Sometimes he makes a cut with his knife, not because of some sin that needs to be dealt with, but because he knows that this will develop us and mature us and cause us to grow. Sometimes he sits down and explains what he has done so that we can make sense of it. Sometimes he does not. And we feel the cut of the scalpel and the pain and the perplexity. And we cry out, why? And he says, trust me. And we don't know why all the time. And that is why, one of the reasons why, that we must always, always, always know that our God never does anything to damage us spiritually. Never does anything to damage us spiritually. We need to always believe that he is the God of truth and that he works out all things for our good, that he knows the end from the beginning and he is steering us to a joyful conclusion, whether in this life or the next, that we are his dearly loved children, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, and we are being more and more shaped and molded into the very image of Christ, always by him. And just as the surgeon brings us pain so that we will be better later on, God does his surgical works on us for our good always. The book of Job begins with a brief and very important introduction regarding the kind of man that Job was. He was a godly man and he was very rich. That's the first 5 verses of the book of Job. He was righteous and he was rich, and it lists the number of cattle, the number of sheep, the number of how much stuff he has. Okay? And that is the setting for the book of Job. And after telling us what kind of man Job was, we are then taken into the chambers of God, where a meeting is taking place between God and Satan. Chapter 1, verses 6 to 12. There was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And God says to him, where have you been? And Satan answered the Lord and said, going around the earth, to and fro, and just seeing what's going on. There is a second meeting in chapter 2, verses 1 to 10, following on this first meeting and the things that happened because of it. And these two conversations explain to us why the things that are about to happen to Job, why they happen. And it is important for us to know that Job didn't know about this meeting between Satan and God. If Job wrote the book, then he found out about the meeting between Satan and God. If he didn't, he may have died without ever knowing about it. Do such meetings still take place? I don't know. I don't think so. Jesus said in John 12:31, now is the judgment of this world. Now will the ruler of this world be cast out. Revelation 12 says, now the salvation and power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night. I don't think they happen. I might be wrong on that. But I know this. If meetings like this still do happen, just like this meeting, God's in charge of it. God is in charge of the meeting. In this account of Job enduring the horrible, and they are horrible, horrible things that happened to them, who do you see as being in charge in the meeting that decided they could happen? If you see Satan in charge, then you are not seeing right. And if you think these opening events are showing Satan in charge of what happens to Job, you're completely missing the point of the whole book of Job. Watch this, or listen to this. Verse 7, God says to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth, from walking up and down on it." And the Lord said to Satan, now, we are not to question God, but at this point, I just want to say, oh Lord, what are you doing? Who brings up Job? And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" It is God who brings Job into the conversation. There is none like him on the earth, blameless, upright, who fears God and turns from evil. Satan answered the Lord and said, "Does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You've blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. Stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face." Of course he loves you. Of course he serves you. He's rich. He has everything anybody could need or want. Take it from him. And the Lord said to Satan, you know where this is going, "Behold, all that he has is in your hand, only against him do not stretch out your hand." So Satan leaves the presence of God, and Job loses everything. He loses his barns, he loses his cattle, he loses his sheep, he loses everything. He loses all 10 of his children from attack and from nature. It seems there's a tornado, a horrible lightning storm, and there are evil men who attack. And all his children die. And all his stuff is gone. And he has nothing. And he has no one. But Job lives. Why does Job live? God, guys, folks, this is hard. And I'd love to skip over the hard stuff when we preach from the Bible, but I don't think we should. Why does Job live? Because God said, don't touch Job. That's why Job lives. Against him, do not stretch out your hand. Second meeting. And the Lord said to Satan in chapter 2, verse 3, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And you want to scream out and say, don't do that. Don't bring him up again. This isn't enough. Johnny Erickson got breast cancer several years ago. And I said, "Lord, what? Quadriplegia is not enough? I don't understand this. I don't know how this works. What in the world are you doing?" He loses everything. And Satan comes back and God says, "Look at Job, still serving me." And Satan answered the Lord, "Skin for skin. All that a man has he will give for his life. Stretch out your hand and touch his bone and his flesh. He'll curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, he is in your hand. Only spare his life." And he gets these boils, whatever they are, and he is afflicted physically to the point that he wishes he had never been born, but he does not die. Why doesn't he die? Because God told Satan, don't take his life. Who's in charge of this? Job had two responses to his hardships that had come to him. In 121, or 121, we read this, "And Job said, Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." In chapter 2, verse 10, well, you have to read verse 9. "Then his wife said to him, 'Do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die.'" Now, before we slam dunk on this woman, can we remember that she's just lost 10 children? Can we cut her some slack here a little bit? This woman is going through pain I can't imagine. There was a Puritan in the 17th century named John Owen. Had, I think, 11 children. Only one made it out of her teenage years, and she died before she was 30. I think we could understand some pain. So, yeah, she may have been speaking ill, but I think God forgave her. And I think we can understand where those ill words came from. But Job said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" Not moral evil, but bad stuff. And then we see God's response to the two times that Job responded to what had happened to him. In 1 verse 21, Job said, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away." In verse 22, God says, in all this, Job did not sin. He was not mistaken. He did not tell a lie. He wasn't misunderstanding what had happened. The Lord had given to him, and the Lord had taken it away. In chapter 2, verse 10, when he responds to his wife, when he says, "Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" God says in response to that, in all this, Job did not sin with his lips. In other words, what he said was true. What he said was right. If Job were a 21st century Christian, and he said what he said in chapter 1, verse 21, and 2, verse 10, how would a lot of Christians respond to him? No, 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 no. No, you must never say that God takes away. God doesn't take away. God only gives. And God only gives what is good and never what is adverse. I remember hearing a very well-known, you would know if I mentioned his name, very well-known TV preacher. He said that he was preaching outdoors and it started to rain, and it wasn't a good godly rain, it was a bad devilish rain. And at that point, you just want to watch Howdy Doody or something. You know, you just go watch something else. Flee from stuff like that. If God has nothing to do, dear ones, get this. If God has nothing to do with the calamities of your life, if he could not have stopped them from happening, if he is only at work when the good things happen, then what in the world are you doing asking him to make them stop? If he couldn't stop them from coming, and he can't stop them from happening, what are you asking him to do about them? Why are you asking him to do anything about them? He had nothing to do with them. He should say to you, "What are you asking me for? I got nothing to do with this. I didn't do this. I couldn't stop it from happening, and I can't make it stop now." If you only have a God who only does what is good, how are you going to pray about the hardships that are in your life? If he had nothing to do with you getting into your pickle, and he had nothing to do with stopping worse things from happening, then what makes you think he can do anything to get you out of them? Where was he when they were taking place? Did he take a holiday? That's how Elijah taunted the prophets of Baal, who couldn't light the sacrifice on Mount Carmel. Maybe your God's asleep. Maybe he's away on vacation. Why doesn't he light the altar? That's not our God. If you have the God who cannot be involved in the calamities of life, I don't know where you're going to go for any comfort from him. But if you have the God of Job 1:21, the Lord has given and the Lord has taken away. We lost a baby, 1990. And the thing that I remember most about the comfort that we got during that horrible time in our lives was this. It was Romans 8:28. One of the most blessed promises to all the children of God. God works out even the death of your child for good to those who love him and are the called according to his purpose. We're going to New Brunswick in September, Heather and I, on a little holiday, and we will stop at a little church in Blacksville, New Brunswick, and we will go to a grave there. And we will cry. And then we'll go on. Because our God did something for our good, and I don't know yet what that good is. This is my God who's in charge of everything. Isaiah 40 says, if you have this God, and the God of Isaiah 46, I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, from ancient times, things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all my purpose. There is no better place to hide than there. Amos 3:6, is a trumpet blown in a city and the people are not afraid? Does disaster come to a city unless the Lord has done it? You make sense of, I'm not going to give you a, yeah, but what about this? Yeah, all the yeah buts that can come when we read a verse like that. And I have them too. But this I know, that if God can't control the disaster, why is it in such a mess? Why did this thing happen? Why did that thing happen? I remember when 9/11 happened and a very famous Christian lady said, well, God's too much of a gentleman to interfere in our affairs. And it just made my ears blow off. That's not our God. Our God is the one who can take us when we go there and get on our knees and say, Lord, what in the world are you doing? And he replies, as he replied to Habakkuk, wait and see. For the just shall live by faith. In him we have obtained an inheritance, having been predestined according to the purpose of him who works all things out according to the counsel of his will. For from him and through him and to him are all things, to him be glory forever. If you have that God, then you can call on that God for help, mercy, understanding, and comfort, because you know that the God of whom those verses are true can do something about the problem. Because that God is in charge of everything. Romans 8:28 doesn't mean that God stumbles into a situation. He goes away for a couple of minutes, couple of months, takes a holiday, comes back. I say, what's wrong with you guys? Look at the mess you've got. Well, I'll make it to work out for good. That's not how this works. God is always there. He is always at work. He always has our welfare at his heart. We may never know why certain things happen. In this book, God never told Job why. He found out if he wrote the book why. But you get the last chapter of Job, fascinating. It's twice as many barns, twice as much cattle, twice as many sheep, twice as much of everything, and 10 more children. Why didn't he get 20 children? Why didn't he get twice as many kids? You know why? Because he didn't lose them. That's why. He's going to see them again. That's glorious stuff. We may never know why certain things happen. But we know that whatever we're going through, this is not the problem. Your issue, your calamity, is not the one that finally stumps God. That's not it. And he will bring this out for your good. This, in the life of Job, and I've preached on this verse before, it's just one of my favorites, and you have to suffer by getting my favorites again and again. Through the church, the manifold wisdom of God is made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly places. The purpose of the church is to show the magnificent work of God to Satan and his team. And that's what God is doing here in Job. Okay, you think that I can't keep Job faithful if you destroy all he has? You think I can't keep Job faithful to me if you destroy his health? Watch this. Job did very well in the opening chapters of the book, but he didn't do so well all the time as you read through the book. He says in chapter 3, verse 3, "Let the day perish on which I was born, and the night that said a man is conceived, let that day be darkness. May God above not seek it, nor light shine upon it. Let gloom and deep darkness claim it. Let clouds dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. I wish I was never born," he says. Chapter 4, verse 11, and 9, verse 11, God doesn't care for me, he says. Or that's what it amounts to. And on top of this, he has 3 friends who are insisting that his troubles are all his fault because he must have been hiding some great wickedness. And Job keeps defending his righteousness. Sometimes I wonder, just a little too much. He almost acclaims sinlessness. Job gets to the point that he wonders if living righteously has been a complete waste of time. That's where the real battle is being fought. Maybe I've just wasted my time. And the final things that he says, chapter 36? 34. Is it? Just a minute. Where does Job end? Oh yeah, way back. Job 31. And then Elihu responds up until the end of chapter 37. And then God responds to Job. So we see the conversation with Satan and God. We see the things that happened to Job. We see Job being very faithful and hanging on. And he does. He has his weak moments as he travels through his conversations with his friends. And he wishes he was never born. And he begins to wonder if it's really worthwhile. And then God shows up. And God responds. I read things and say, Christians shouldn't be sarcastic and they should say what they mean and never. I've read this. It hits me hard because sarcasm is one of my dearest friends. But then I read Job 38, 39, and 40, and I feel vindicated. God is being sarcastic here. Where were you? Oh, you know so much. You know that living righteously is a waste of time. You know that you should never have been born. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. You know so much. You're so smart. And he goes on like that. 38, 39, 40, 41. 4 chapters. And God keeps on saying, tell me, answer me. You think you're so smart. And that's what we do. I know I don't deserve this. I know God's not loving me. I know he doesn't know what he's up to. I know he skipped over my prayers. I know. And God says, read Job 38. Where were you? You think I don't know what I'm doing? I've created constellations. He said, can you put a fishhook in Leviathan, whatever creature that is, some big monster? Can you put a fishhook in his mouth? I took my grandson fishing yesterday. I caught one this big. And he caught one this big. But none of us caught Leviathan. And it all comes together for God to say, what? I know what I'm doing. Trust me. And the God who knows what he's doing is the God that you can call out to for help and mercy and understanding and comfort. And God's point with Job is, you speak as if You know better than I do, and you do not. And the God that we serve is the God who can do whatsoever he pleases, and we bow down and worship. But it doesn't just end there. You see, if I stop right now, then all I've done for you is tell you that God is harsh and does terrible things, and you should worship him in the hope that maybe terrible things don't happen to you. But that's not it. For the God who's in charge of everything is the God who wrote Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. He causes me to lie down beside still waters, green pastures. He restores my soul. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he is with me. Where did that come from? Where did that psalm come from? That came from the psalmist who walked through the valley of the shadow of death. Maybe wished he would die and didn't die. Got through it and looked back and say, oh my word. Even though I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, he was there to comfort me. Incredible. He didn't stop me from walking through it, but he walked through it with me. It's the God of Psalm 46. We preached on that a few weeks ago. God is my refuge and strength, very present help. This God, the God of Job, is the God of Psalm 23. The God of Job is the God of Psalm 46. The God of Job is the God of 1 Peter 5:7, casting all your cares upon him. Why? Why? Because he cares for you. Yes. This God cares for me. The God of Hebrews 2:18, for because he has himself suffered when tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. He was here. He experienced it. He knows what you're going through. He endured this life with all its aches and pains and calamities. God knows, dear ones. 38 to 40 of Job, 38 to 41 of Job is telling us God knows what he is doing. And when the calamities of life hit, as they do, look to him and remember, you don't just have to read the book of Job. You can read the book of Psalms. And you can read 1 Peter 5. And you can read Hebrews 2 and Hebrews 4 and Matthew 11 and a whole bunch of others. And you can see there the God of 2 Corinthians 1 we looked at Wednesday night. Praise be the God of all comfort who comforts us in all our sorrows so that when others are sorrowful, we can comfort them with the comfort that we receive from God. How good is that? God knows what he's doing, and we don't. But he says, trust me. And when the calamities of life hit, look to him. He is in charge. He knows what he's doing. He loves you. He is doing something for your ultimate good. And one day you shall see the fruit of it, and you shall look back and say, even though I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, he was with me. And his rod and his staff comfort me. He wields his scalpel for your good. And when the scalpel cuts, it hurts. But the great physician knows what ails you, and he knows how to make you better, and he loves you more than you love yourself. And there can be no better comfort than this. God is in charge of everything, and he wants to comfort me. God bless you.
Let's stand together.